Good afternoon, everybody. Today is Thursday, November the 17th, and it's 12:21. We'll start off with a sound saying from Philippians 1:9 and 10, and it says, "And this I pray, that ye may be sincere and without offense till the day of Christ. And this I pray, that ye may be sincere and without offense till the day of Christ." That's right. We're supposed to be sincere and truthful all the days of our lives. Okay, Nehemiah 4:20. It says, "Our God shall fight for us." And even today, in the mess that we have made his world, he will still fight for us and make things straight. But first, before he does that, he always gives man plenty of time to get their act together. Why? Because his patience surpasses the patience of man. Okay? He has infinite patience. He's an infinite God, so his patience is infinite as well. Okay? Our God shall fight for us, and he will. All right, I want to go over, I've been trying to highlight some of these notes that I thought I might have given to you already. I'm not sure. So we're just going to go over the ones that I believe I didn't give you. Abijam was a sodomite, a Solamite, and he was a Levite prophet of Shalem in the days of Solomon. He was also in constant war with Jeroboam, and he is also the father of Asa. Okay, and his name means Father of the Sea. Father of the Sea. Let me read what a threat sounds to you when a prophet comes and delivers this particular threat to you. You're more likely to be fearful out of your mind in the biblical times. And this is a threat that Jeroboam received from one of the prophets. It says, "I will cut off from Jeroboam every last male in Israel, slaves or free. I will burn up the house of Jeroboam as one burns dung, until it is all gone. Dogs will eat those belonging to Jeroboam who die in the city, and birds of the air will feed on those who die in the country. The Lord has spoken." That is a classic threat. Okay? And it did come to pass, and the only one of Jeroboam's people that was actually buried, was the little boy that became sick. And the Lord said that out of all his people, that little boy is the only one that he saw any good in. And he was the only one that was blessed to be buried. All right? Because he initially started off good, on a good foot, and somehow or another, he went on to get some counseling from someone other than a prophet of the Lord. And after this counseling, he went out and he built 2 calves. Remember, this was his ultimate sin. It talks about Jeremiah's sin was creating 2 calves of gold and sending one to Bethel as a worship site in the south of the kingdom, and the other to Dan as a worship site in the north, so that the people of the northern kingdom would not have to continue to go to Jerusalem to worship. And he pointed at the calf and told the people that this is your God, and this thing has brought you and rescued you out of Egypt. And prior to that, just to prove to you that Jeroboam was in good standing with God at one time, because he sent his servant to give him his prophecy of what would become, and he will become king. So at one point, the Lord promises Jeroboam that if he would just keep the commandments, he would become king over Israel. When Solomon learned that Jeroboam was a threat to his kingdom, of course, he made every effort to try to kill the man, and he had to find refuge in Egypt. Okay, and he stayed there for approximately 10 years until he discovered that the king was dead. And Jeroboam was also the king that was trying to chastise a servant of the Lord at the altar, and as he extended his hand, it shriveled up on him. King Jeroboam heard what the man of God cried out against the altar at Bethlehem. He stretched out his hand from the altar and said, "Seize him." But his hand he stretched out towards the man, shriveled up so that he could not pull it back. So this is when he begins backsliding, as we call it. That's when he begins to turn his back upon God. All right, let's see what else I have going on here. We already talked about apostasy and the different levels of faith. What else do I have here? All right, we have a little bit more here. Of course, King David was a good king. And for the most part, the only offense that David ever did against the Lord or God was the situation he got involved with Uriah and Bathsheba. Other than that, he followed the commandments of God and his statutes to the letter. Whereas his son Solomon started off on a good foot, and he basically was great until he started marrying all these foreign women, and then he began to kind of pull away from God. But initially he was also a good king for the most part until he started falling to the wayside and following other gods, the gods of his wife. However, sometimes our children do not always mimic our good nature. Sometimes our children will mimic the nature of the bad parent. So Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, was just as wicked as he could be. And he was not a good king like Solomon. He in turn, Jeroboam also, the son of Naboth, was not a good king. He started off strong and then he went to the side, and his son Nadab was also a wicked king indeed. Okay. Abijah was also a wicked king. His son Asa was a very good king indeed. So sometimes we'll end up with a wicked king, but the son may be a very good king. So it really depends on the individual and their faith. Omar was an evil king. He was the father of Ahaz, the husband of Jezebel. And of course, Ahaz was the most wicked king at the time that he reigned. He also was a very wicked king. Where else are we going? Okay, remember we were talking about the word refuge. Refuge. Refuge is defined as a shelter or protection from danger, trouble, a place of shelter, protection, safety, anything to which one has recourse for aid, relief, or escape. Though through this we see God is our refuge because he is the one that actually directs our footsteps, and he directs our stops. And in the Bible, there have been several times in which an individual or a group of people needed to take refuge for one reason or another. They might have been threatened by a king, like Harold threatened the life of baby Jesus. So, of course, Egypt was a hot spot for Joseph, Mary, and Lord Baby. Egypt was also a hot spot for Jeroboam. He had to run before he became king, because he had to run from the sitting king, Solomon. So yeah, King Solomon did have a little wickedness in him. And King David, of course, before he became king, he hid out in the cave of Adullam. That cave was near the location of Nabal, where he tried to get some food and was rejected. There was also a time when Obadiah hid 100 servants of the Lord. He had 50 in one cave, he had 50 in another cave, and he hid them because Jezebel was on a rampage, and she was looking for all of the prophets of the Lord. She was upset with Elijah because he had pronounced that there would be no rain for some time, and the rain didn't come, and she got nasty with the dryness, so she started going after the servants of the Lord. So Obadiah hid 100 of them in a cave. Okay, so the story we're going to read about today has to do with refuge, needing refuge, and listening to God's instruction as to which direction you should go. Whenever you have a problem, all you have to do is just get on your knees, give it to God, and wait for the answer. And if you follow the instructions to the letter, you will get your due reward for your obedience. Okay, so Elijah got his due reward. He was fed by birds, ravens, for a little while, and then the brook dry, and then he was spared again by a woman outside picking up sticks so that she can take the little bit of bread that she had or flour that she had so she could cook it for her and her son and die. And the amazing thing about this story that's just baffling to me is that the little bit of bread that she has, she does agree to give the prophet a portion first. She does that right. And then the flour and the oil lasts her for a while, because in the story you hear after a while. Now she still has this flour and this oil, and is feeding the three of them. So she was becoming a stone cold believer little by little by little, but the flour, the prolong of the flour and the oil did not really pull her all the way in. It wasn't until her son became sick, and the prophet laid upon the child and prayed and cried unto God for the life of the child. And after this, she became a stone cold believer. And I'm saying to myself, what would have happened if the child would have never gotten sick? She would have still been lukewarm. Like some of us are non-believers, some of you are lukewarm believers, and some of us are stone cold believers in the God that we serve. Okay, so let's read this. It's not that long. It's only 25 verses. Let's begin. Elijah fed by ravens. Now Elijah the Tishbite from Tishbite in Gilead said to Ahab, "As the Lord, the God of Israel, lives, whom I serve, there will be neither dew nor rain in the next few years except at my word." So at the time he spoke these words, the king believed him not at all, King Ahab. Then the word of the Lord came to Elijah, leave here, turn eastward, and hide in the Kerith Ravine, east of the Jordan. So all the time when something is coming your way, God will always give you instructions. It should be good when you follow these instructions, because he always gives them to you in plenty enough time to save your hide. Okay? So he was an obedient servant, so he listened to the word of God when he told him that he should leave. Okay? Because God knew what was coming. Jezebel. Then the word of the Lord came to Elijah, leave here, turn eastward, and hide in the Kerith Ravine, east of the Jordan. You will drink from the brook, and I have ordered the ravens to feed you there. And the ravens literally brought him bread and meat. So he did what the Lord had told him. He went to the Kerith Ravine, east of the Jordan, and stayed there. The ravens brought him bread and meat in the morning, and bread and meat in the evening, and he drank from the brook. The widow at Zarephath. Sometime later, the brook dried up because there had been no rain in the land. Then the word of the Lord came to him, go at once to Zarephath of Sidon and stay there. I have commanded a widow in that place to supply you with food. So he went to Zarephath. When he came to the town gate, widow was there gathering sticks. He called to her and asked, would you bring me a little water in a jar so that I may drink? As she was going to get it, he called and bring me, please, a piece of bread. As surely as the Lord your God lives. Okay, so she's saying it is his God, not hers yet. Okay, so his God has not become her God yet. Okay. She replied, I don't have any bread, only a handful of flour in a jar and a little oil in a jug. I am gathering a few sticks to take home and make a meal for my son and for myself and my son, that we may eat it and die. Elijah said to her, don't be afraid. Go home and do as you have said, but first make a small cake of bread for me from what you have and bring it to me, and then make something for yourself and your son. For this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, said. The jar of flour will not be used up, and the jar of oil will not run dry until the day the Lord gives rain on the land. Now, he told her this. Okay? He said these words to her. And the oil and the flour did not run dry. Oh, Jesus. She went away and did as Elijah had told her. So there was food every day for Elijah and for the woman and her family. For the jar of flour was not used up, and the jar of oil did not run dry, in keeping with the word of the Lord spoken by Elijah. Sometime later, now this oil and this flour is still serving them all well. Sometime later, the son of the woman who owned the house became ill. He grew worse and worse and finally stopped breathing. She said to Elijah, what do you have against me, man of God? Did you come to remind me of my sins and kill my son? Give me your son, Elijah replied. He took him from her arms, carried him to the upper room where he was staying, and laid him on his bed. Then he cried out to the Lord, O Lord my God, have you brought tragedy also upon this widow I am staying with by causing her son to die? Then he stretched himself out on the boy. That means he laid upon the boy. 3 times he laid upon the boy, and each time he cried out to the Lord as he laid upon the boy, O Lord, oh my God, let the boy's life return to him. And he's screaming at this time. Okay, the Lord heard Elijah's cry, and the boy's life returned to him, and he lived. Elijah picked up the child and carried him down from the room into the house. He gave him to his mother and said, look, your son is alive. Then the woman said to Elijah, now I know that you are a man of God, and that the word of the Lord from your mouth is the truth. Isn't it crazy how you have to do some miracle in the presence of man sometime for them to really believe that those things you say to them is the truth, even though he has spoken the truth to her earlier by telling her that the flour and the oil would not run dry. That wasn't sufficient enough. For some of us, that would have been all that it took for us to recognize a man or woman of God. Now you have a generation that even if you bring their child back to life, they still will not believe. They will say it was coincidental. They will say all kinds of monstrosity out of their mouth instead of believing the miracle that just has happened right before their eyes. That's why Jesus refused to do any more miracles for them. Because he had done many, many miracles. Many. Even calling a man out of his grave. Yet they still did not believe. Don't be among those. Please. Be a believer. Huh? Read the word yourself. Instead of having somebody read it to you all the time. Pick up your Bible. Blow the dust off it like I tell people. Open it up to whatever page. Don't look for a page. God has a page for you. Just open the book and read. That's where he wants you to start. Thank you for listening. My name is Brenda Guerrero, and as always, I love you, but God loves you more. May the peace of God be upon you. May the protection of God surround you and all those you love. And may the will of God for this earth be manifested. Have a beautiful day. Don't forget, be kind, be gentle, show compassion, and always be true and sincere in all that you do. Take care.